Hi, Khatereh.
Hi.
Let's just wait for a few more people. That's always the last minute thrill. Okay, so let's see, waiting room. No, it's not in the waiting room. It's seconds. Thank you, Graham. Yeah, it would be great if we could actually start and solve these issues. Thank you, Ray. But it seems like there are two people waiting to be let in. Okay. Now we are in. Hello, everyone.
I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Well,
I can hear you just fine. Yeah.
Okay, we are all in. Apologies to the audience for the delay. I'm just gonna mute myself on the other one, otherwise I can hear myself twice. It's not nice. So yeah, yes, I think I'm gonna which one. So hello again, everyone. Apologies for the few minutes delay, some technical issues. I'm very pleased to have with me three excellent speakers. And before I even start, I'm going to share a couple of posts, a couple of links with you in the chat. Those will be for the community to join the waiting list and for the newsletter. And then at the same time, I encourage everyone to ask questions. We only have about 30 minutes, but I'll do my best to get you an answer to get the answer even later if need be. And with that, I'd like to start with Khatereh Ahmadi. Khatereh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Khatereh Ahmadi. So I lead the Search and Evaluation Business Development team at MSD for Europe and Middle East. Been in the company for around 9 years. And previous to that, I was founder and CEO and various other roles in biotech startups.
Thank you, Khatereh. And with that, going kind of clockwise, Ernst, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Fabio, for having me. It's a pleasure. So my name is Ernst Geutjes. I've got a background in cancer science. Worked on both sides of the table as an entrepreneur, but also as an investor. So hope to share my experience from that.
Thank you. And with these on joining from San Francisco, I think, so a bit far away from where I am in London, Nina Kjellson. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
You did. Thank you. Yeah. So hi, I'm Nina Kjellson. I'm a general partner with Canaan. We're an early stage diversified venture capital firm. We put about a third of our capital to biotech startups. And I have a background in human biology and health policy, and I've been doing biotech investing for about 25 years.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, everyone. And with that one, I would like to kick off with the first question. Of course, we have Khatereh here that actually has experience on both sides of the table as well. But I'm going to start with asking if you were to pick, if you could design your ideal company, your ideal investable biotech, what would it look like? And then I'm going to ask Khatereh, what would it look like, the ideal company to acquire as kind of big pharma? Who would like to go first?
Ladies first, right?
Yeah.
But I can also start.
I'll take a stab. I've been reflecting a bit on Canaan's sort of investment strategy over the course of this year and looking ahead to next year. And you had made a point, Fabio, as we were prepping for this, that 70% of biotech startups fail, and that they fail to scale because of a poor market understanding and strategic misalignment. And I think that's a really great launch into sort of what we look for. I mean, first and foremost is a fit with the strategy of our fund as it is. But then we really think about what is the strategic market fit with where medicine is going and where disease indication is requiring intervention, and what will be truly additive to an armamentarium for patients, providers, and payers versus incremental, and to have a good sense of a company or startup's context for who else is out there and how do you differentiate from competition, not just today, but competition that's developing. And I think that comes around to founders that are both really passionate, but also pragmatic in thinking about what is the 3-5 year strategic plan for development of a technology or a product, and how does that fit into, from our point of view, ultimately portfolios such as Khatereh's, because that's the ultimate sort of a handoff of the ball. We can rarely take things all the way to commercialization as venture-backed startups, and so we're really looking for things that align well with the commercial franchises and strategic priorities of pharma. And so looking for teams that really look ahead to that, constantly market test that, and build the right data set to be a really great strategic outcome as a return.
Thank you. Who else would like to?
Yeah, I can also provide my perspective, I guess, from both the investor perspective as well as the entrepreneur and perspective. I kind of like to compare building a biotech with building a company. I mean, with building a company, you start with the end goal in mind, right? The house, and then you kind of determine what's needed to get there. I guess in the case of biotech, it's going to be a house which is very remotely located on a difficult location, but has a very high value. But in the end, if you do that, then of course you also need to find the right people to work with, and those people also need to work together, right? you will inevitably encounter many problems during construction. And it will also take you a lot more time, and it will also cost you a lot more money than you think it does. So speaking from experiences here, but and actually, biotech company creation is not a whole lot different, and investors, I think, will evaluate you on all of these aspects, right? So similar to what Nina said, start with the end goal in mind, right? Because without having a clear understanding of what the product will look like, what patients will benefit from it, and why, I think it will be difficult to persuade investors to give you money, right? So it's very critical to understand what the product will look like, meaning the product label, and kind of work yourself backwards what's needed to get there. And be very specific, right? So if you're, for instance, developing a product for lung cancer patients that are resistant to EGFR inhibitors, well, then you need to show preclinically that your drug has activity in the EGFR resistant lung cancer models, right? So start with the end goal in mind. I think another thing is building a strong team and strong supporters. So I think investors are also looking for your ability to kind of effectively persuade people to join you on your mission, right? Whether it's a top-notch SAB, whether it's top executives or key opinion leaders, all that sort, right? So again, having a plan is very important in persuading those people to join you, right? And being collaborative is key, I think. You know, you need to go for the win-win situation because you're in it for the long run, right? Medicine development is very hard. I think the final thing is that, well, biotechs will inevitably encounter many problems, right? Whether it's technical or fundraising. So also here, I think investors are looking for ways or for signals that the management team can actually overcome such problems. So being resourceful, also be coachable, right? Investors have very valuable feedback that you can use to adapt your plans. And you know, I was involved in a company called Vlinder where we raised 20 million in April this year, and we approached 120 investors and ultimately found 4 that were wanting to invest in the company. But that was pretty tough, you know. But we every time we went back to incorporate the feedback, redevelop the plans, develop new data, and that moved the needle for the investors.
Thank you, Ernst. You touched several good points, but just on the very kind of last one, 120 investors approach and only 4. That's in a way to highlight that it is lots of hard work. Fundraising is not as easy as maybe you might perceive by just reading newsletters. And like, yes, in the US, we have lots more perhaps of risk capital, but it's not gambling capital. So we need to convince investors that what you're doing is worth investing. And
I would just love to interject. I don't know if folks on the line are familiar with the podcast Acquired. It's a great sort of origin story of companies throughout time. And just listen to the Starbucks one, and you know they approach over 400 investors to get less than $2 million to launch Starbucks. So I think it's just a reminder that grit and resilience is so important in this business, and that's not a reflection of the business not being a good business. Starbucks, I think we can agree, turned out to be a really, really good business, but it can take some time to get that story across and find the right match.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you, Nina. It is about right match at the end of the day, and sometimes you might get discouraged and thinking that you just don't have the right strategy, you don't have what it takes. But Khatereh, can I then ask your opinion on like being on the big pharma M&A and BD&L? You're a bit later stage, but what would it look like a great company to then be acquired by Merck in your case?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we buy both early stage and late stage companies, of course, but you know, it's a bit of a boring answer, but it's all about the asset, it's all about the data, the target, the data package, and how it fits into our portfolio. Of course, that's a big consideration. And usually when, you know, and also the deal model, whether we acquire or license, it depends on the type of company it is. If it's a single asset, mainly a single asset company, of course, then the acquisition is the better kind of deal model. And if the company has a portfolio that we're not particularly interested in, other than the asset we want, then it's more of a licensing deal. But what kind of company we look for, I think. Apart from the obvious thing that they are developing a drug that really fits in our portfolio, or maybe it's in a white space that's just something really great, and that recently happened with iBio, for example, as an example. This was we've been in and out of the ophthalmology field, but we hadn't it wasn't that we said, okay, we really want to go big in ophthalmology, let's buy iBio. It's that this opportunity started off our, consolidated our interest in ophthalmology. It was a great management team, and been there, done it again, but also the asset, the data looked pretty amazing, and the early stage clinical data, and novel mechanism of action. Novel mechanism of action, very differentiated from what's out there. And usually with these type of opportunities, or any opportunities we're considering seriously, we have to get alignment with discovery, clinical, CMC, regulatory, market positioning. So all of them for us have to align at our governance meeting for us to move forward. And that's something I think for even young biotechs to think about, if they have a new modality, what is the CMC going to look like? How complex is that? All of these can be deal makers or deal breakers. Have they really thought about, how they're going to develop this compound or whatever it is, and when is it going to hit the market? And at that point, will anyone care about this? How do you think it's going to fit in the landscape of other assets that are in development? So I think we don't expect young biotech companies to have all the answers, but we expect them to have thought about it and at least have some answers to those critical points.
I think that's such a wonderful point. I think both Ernst and Khatereh made some really nice points that can sound to entrepreneurs or founders like just jargon, like been there, done that, or win-win situations. But I think that been there, done that, when we're trying to develop high novelty, and I think it's important as an industry that we do keep driving innovation and high novelty and do some things that have been never been done before. And yet, I think we should be looking for proxies or near similar case studies to learn from. And if your own team doesn't have that been there, done that expertise internally, there are so many ways to get that through advisors, consultants, board members, your early syndicate partners, which is really important. And Ernst's point about win-win, every constituent is always going to be thinking, what's in it for me? And so when you're trying to sell a story, whether it's to me as an investor or Khatereh as a BD&L person, you really have to align your mindset with what will be in it for them, transactionally, from a technical perspective. And I think and creating that energy. And then finally, I love the comparison to building a house, because when you are building a house, you have to orchestrate a really diverse set of skills and trades that really have nothing to do with one another. What does an electrician have to do with a painter? And to get them to work together in a highly regulated environment, which is exactly what we're doing too in building drugs or platforms in a regulated, FDA or EMEA or other environment.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think we are kind of merging to another kind of point. It sounds from what I hear is that perhaps modalities or even therapeutic area, it doesn't matter as much as many early stage funders might believe. Like lately we've had lots of interest for ADC, radiopharmaceutical, perhaps some gene therapy, and cardiometabolic diseases, maybe ophthalmology, and a few other areas, perhaps a bit less. And that is the reason why some early stage funders might feel like discouraged if they are not developing a new oncology drug or a new kind of metabolic drug. What would be your opinion on that? Does it depend really on the therapeutic area? And is that the reason why sometimes there are like very large rounds, like upside, like 80 million Series A, 400 million even, I remember at the beginning of this year, as opposed to like other companies that perhaps struggle to raise even a 10 Series A?
Well, I can take a quick stab. I think some of the mega rounds are really about us being in a risk-off environment. And so we want to create financings that take programs further. One, the market has shifted to more clinical stage than preclinical, and then in clinical stage later. So we're funding phase 2s and even phase 3s. And we're putting together syndicates that want to get all the way through that data set with some runway to take it and do something. So that's one reason that rounds have gotten big. To do a good phase 2, 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollars. I think the mega rounds at 300, 400, 500 tend to be a little bit more in mega trends, like AI or radiopharmaceuticals was really hot. Some of it may be because CMC is really expensive and you're building capacity like a radiopharma, but a lot of it has to do with significant market momentum, and you're sort of setting up companies, especially with an idea that their approach may be quite early, and you want to fund them to be able to be sort of market risk proof, or you're just having a bit of the market dog pile when something is really, really in vogue.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I also think, I think like Nina said, I think the reason that we see these mega rounds is being caused by the fact that indeed deal making has occurred late. So in the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of early stage deal making, at least in the oncology space, and also early stage companies that were going public. And that was of course great, because that allowed investors to sell their companies and raise new funds, and so the cycle started again of starting new companies, right? So I think nowadays in these markets, investors are indeed looking for big commercial opportunities, as well as strong contingency plans, right? So in the pandemic, I think you could actually get your platform company financed and use the first 2 years of financing to kind of figure out the application. I don't think the investors now have the patience to do that. Also being offset by the fact that, well, deal making is occurring late, or companies might actually need to develop the products all the way to the market, right? So I think it's critically important to, again, upfront determine the commercial applications, also have sort of contingency plan, meaning that you have multiple applications being supported by data. Because, in the oncology space, it's pretty competitive and treatment landscapes change all the time. So you need to be prepared for that. And investors like that you have a plan which is flexible. On one end, it's about commercial opportunity, but also being, again, flexible to preempt certain situations occurring in the clinical space.
Thank you. Khatereh, you were about to say something?
No, I agree with what's been said. There are certain trends that are created. Now, of course, I&I and obesity is pretty hot. So, there's a lot of companies springing up in that space, and a lot of deal making in that space as well. So and that's driven by innovation. So whenever there's an area of innovation in a space, of course, that's going to create this kind of buzz, both in investments and in deal making, and also contributes to these larger rounds, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's. I think from a pharma standpoint, that there was a lot of talk about late stage deals. We do, if you look on year, at least in MSD's deals, we do both early stage deals and late stage deals. early stage deals are really important for our pipeline. They're really, one would say our bread and butter kind of deals. So that we're always on the lookout for those. And obviously they have to be priced right so that it considers the risks. But I mean, those can actually, some of those early stage deals, if they pan out, they can be the biggest value drivers for pharma. So they're really important. I think we shouldn't lose sight of that.
Well, thank you. Well, I know that I had a kind of similar conversation with some of you, I think with all three of you, around the idea of, for founders, kind of keep motivating and building resilience, and that is actually the in the title of this panel discussion. So building a company is certainly stressful. Not like the fundraising is only one task, let's say. And according to Nature Biotech, 62% of founders in the first 2 years experience high level of stress. 25% experience burnout within the first 2 years. So my question would be, what advice would you give early stage founders to keep motivated while avoiding burnout? And does emotional intelligence play a role in that?
I can have
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can have some of that, because before pharma, I was an entrepreneur myself. So I was founding CEO of Reviral, an antiviral RSV company that got bought by Pfizer a couple of years ago. And it is tough. It was a very tough environment when we were fundraising. It was around 2012, 13. And nobody cared about RSV at that stage, so it was really tough, and a lot of work that you have to do yourself, because you don't have a full team. I think it's you need to have that drive and passion and belief in what you're doing, and I think that kept me going. It took us 3 years to get the Series A, closed, and then we were, off and away. But to get there, it was you really need to, because I would sometimes say to myself, "What are you doing? Maybe you should get a proper job." But instead of fundraising for something that is hard to fundraise for, but something inside me just kept going, because I believed in the quality of the scientists I was working with, and I believed in the opportunity.
It was your purpose.
I don't know. That's
I think back then It was your purpose. You felt a sense of purpose in doing it, and that's what I think is useful to have. So, Ernst, you were saying?
Yeah. So Fabi, I'm not surprised by the statistics that you mentioned or the data. I mean, developing a biotech company and a new drug is a bit like an elite sport, right? So running a marathon at the Olympics or something. And it's certainly taxing. I mean, I've had the same experience, of course. But similar to Khatereh, what keeps me motivated and energized is, of course, the intellectual challenge of developing a new medicine for patients, and of course also the intrinsic goodness that comes with that, right? And certainly that kept me going, and Vlinder and my colleagues there to actually pull off the round and progress with the company. I think to kind of prevent burnout for founders, I think it's critically important to kind of identify what they can uniquely do and what they can outsource, right? And that's of course difficult in the beginning if you're an early stage company, because it almost sounds like you're giving away a little bit of control. But I think it's really key to prevent burnout. And speaking about control, I think it's very important for the team spirit to actually build sort of like a culture of trust, right? So on the other hand, micromanagement, for instance, is detrimental to building a good team spirit, and also a causal factor in burnout. So I think it's very important to identify those people you would like to work with, and also trust, of course, and then actually entrust them with the task at hand, right? That's very important.
I think too is, oh, were you going to say something else, Ernst?
No, it's something else, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please finish. I thought you were.
No, I mean, it's a different comment. I think the final piece of advice I would have is to be able to learn how to make decisions on incomplete information, right? Because you don't have all the knowledge. So basically make decisions on the basis of 70% of the information. That's good enough in our space.
Yeah.
I think to add to the really good points, I think Khatereh was really focused on sort of thesis and mission. And if you're really thesis and mission aligned, that's a huge way to find motivation. And I think, Ernst, you're talking about, in some ways, time management with the outsourcing versus in-keeping, so that you have a more realistic grasp, and then the trust and the transparency with yourself and with your team. I mean, a couple of practical, specific recommendations to that. And I have several companies, Tyra, Actio Biosciences, Rondo, which have all been started by co-founders. And they happen to be co-founders that started at the same time, but I can imagine you can bring a co-founder in, a few months, even a year into an endeavor. But what I think it's offered the founders is another person who has just as much emotional skin in the game, and that can really help carry some of that stress, and that the founders can really talk to each other, whether it's about problem solving or just blowing off some steam. So I think that sense of partnership has been an amazing thing to watch. I have such respect for those relationships and how they've been building together. And I think overall their cultures are better as a consequence. And if you don't have the access to that ready, trusted co-founder, co-conspirator, I think outside mentors and coaches can be really fantastic, because I think being able to talk things through can be really helpful, and to have an outside problem solver. I think some of the burnout is not just the workload and the stress, but also the loneliness of being a founder or CEO.
I totally agree. And a couple of weeks ago, I attended an event here in London, and there were a couple of psychologists that were saying exactly that the burnout is often associated just with workload, but sometimes the workload can also be not that much, and people still burn out. But the loneliness is one thing, and that's why loneliness can be detrimental to many things in life, and like funding a company is stressful, hard work anyway, and building your network and your community is certainly highly valuable and useful. So thank you so much for to the speaker, to the panel members, and thank you to the audience as well for joining in. And I totally enjoy this discussion, and hope to see you again soon.
Wishing everyone happy holidays and a very positive JP Morgan to kick off the year for the sector.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.